In the depths of a vast forest lived a poor woodcutter and his two children. The eldest, Hansel, was lively and courageous, while the youngest, Gretel, was gentle and dreamy, sharing his austere daily routine. With them, the children's stepmother, an austere and merciless woman, ruled the household with an iron fist. Their meager pittance dwindled daily, and when famine struck the country, the woodcutter, in despair, could no longer bring bread to his family. One night he turned to his wife with a heavy heart. "What will become of us? How can we feed our children when we can't even feed ourselves?" "Do you know what we have to do?" replied his wife in an icy voice. "We'll take them into the forest, where the trees are dense and the shade oppressive. We'll build a fire and leave each of them a piece of bread. Then we'll walk away and abandon them. They'll never find their way home." The woodcutter, horrified, shook his head. "No, woman, I can't leave my children like that. The wild beasts would devour them before sunset." But the woman insisted, pestering him relentlessly until he gave in, overcome by his own weakness. At dawn, as the first glimmers of sunlight pierced through the trees, the stepmother rudely awoke the children. "Get up, lazy bones. We're off to the forest to chop wood." She gave each of them a piece of bread and warned, "Keep it safe. You won't have anything else for the day." As he walked, Hansel, with a quick mind, broke his bread into small pieces and sewed them behind him. His worried father asked him why he kept stopping to look around. "I'm looking at my little cat on the roof who's waving at me," replied Hansel. But his stepmother curtly replied, "You fool! It's not your cat. It's the sun rising and shining on the chimney." Hansel continued to throw crumbs, hoping that the path of bread would lead them home. Deeper into the forest than they had ever been, they stopped. A large fire was lit, and the woman said to them, "Stay here, children, and rest if you are tired. We'll come back for you when our work is done." At midday, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel, whose crumbs had already been scattered. Then, exhausted by the weight, they fell asleep, lulled by the crackling of the dying flames. Twilight stretched on and night fell, with no one coming to fetch them. When they awoke, the forest was pitch dark. Gretel, frightened, clung to her brother. But Hansel, sure of himself, whispered, "Don't worry, Gretel. Let's wait for the moon to rise, and it will shine on the breadcrumbs I've sown, and they'll take us home." When the moon appeared, shining in the sky like a beacon of hope, they got up and searched for the crumbs. But they were gone. The forest birds had eaten them all. Hansel gritted his teeth and said, "We'll find our way, don't worry." But they lost their way, and the forest gradually swallowed them up. All night and all the following day they wandered in vain, looking for a way out. Starving, they could only feed on a few scattered berries. Their hope waned as time passed. It was now 3 days since they had left their home, and hunger was weakening them. On the third day of their wandering, as hunger and exhaustion gnawed at them, Hansel and Gretel heard a sweet, melodious song. Looking up, they saw a white bird perched on a high branch. The bird seemed to be inviting them to follow. Curious, they walked behind it, through glades and winding paths, until they came to a strange little house. What a surprise! The little hut was made of bread, its windows shone like transparent sugar, and the roof was covered with golden cakes. Hansel, wide-eyed, declared, "We're saved! Let's eat our fill." He climbed onto the roof to break off a piece, while Gretel attacked the sweet windows. Both savored their finds, forgetting caution in their excitement. But suddenly, a little voice sounded from inside the house. "Who's nibbling away at my home?" The surprised children replied, "It's the wind, the light wind that blows gently." And they resumed their feasting, believing the threat to be over. Hansel, delighted with his discovery, tore off pieces of cake, while Gretel savored every lump of sugar she could reach. While they were still nibbling, the door to the cottage suddenly opened with a sinister creak. An old woman, bent over and leaning on a cane, appeared on the threshold. His red eyes gleamed in the darkness, and his smile revealed yellow teeth. Hansel and Gretel, terrified, dropped the pieces of bread and sugar in their hands. "My poor little ones," she said in a honeyed voice. "Who brought you here? Come inside. It's so cold outside." Trembling and petrified, the children followed her. Inside, a table was already laid with hot milk, sweet pancakes, crisp apples, and golden hazelnuts. After so much hardship, they couldn't resist the invitation. When the meal was over, the old woman led them to soft beds, with sheets as white as snow. Sleep, my dear children. Tomorrow is another day. Tired and full, Hansel and Gretel fell fast asleep, dreaming they were in paradise. But in reality, the old woman was none other than a cruel witch, who had built this house to lure lost children and devour them. In the early hours of the morning, the impatient old witch got up long before the children. With a swift, brutal gesture, she grabbed Hansel and led him into a small, dark room with a barred door. "You'll be nice and warm in here, my boy," she sneered, "and I'll feed you until you're nice and fat." Then she turned to Gretel, waking her with a shrill cry. "Get up, lazy girl! Fetch some water and prepare something nice for your brother. He needs to put on some weight, and you'll be working for me." Poor Gretel. With tears in her eyes, she obeyed without protest. Every day she prepared the best dishes for Hansel, while she received nothing but pieces of stale bread. However, Hansel had a plan. Every morning the witch came to check if he was fat enough. "Show me your hand," she ordered. But Hansel cunningly held out a bone he had found. The witch, blind as a bat, thought he wasn't getting any fatter, and became increasingly annoyed. 4 weeks went by. One morning, fed up, the witch called Gretel in a hoarse voice. "Come on, lazy girl, fetch some water and get the oven ready. Today, whether Hansel is fat or thin, I'll cook and eat him." Gretel, trembling with fear, did as she was told. The oven was already crackling, and flames were coming out of it, licking the edges of the chimney. The witch limped over and ordered, "Bend over and look inside to see if the oven is hot enough." But Gretel, much cleverer than she looked, replied, "I don't know how, Grandma. How can I get in there?" The old hag shouted in annoyance, "You stupid goose! The door's big enough even for me!" And with that, she bent down, slipping her head into the oven opening to set an example. Then Gretel, seizing her chance, summoned all her courage. In one swift movement, she gave the witch a heavy blow, sending her toppling into the oven. Before she could react, Gretel slammed the iron door and pulled the bolt, leaving the witch to scream as the flames consumed her. The scream soon faded, and all was silence. With her heart pounding, Gretel ran to the cage where Hansel was locked up. She opened the door and cried out, "Hansel, we're free! The old witch is dead." Hansel, freed, leapt from his prison like a bird from a cage. They threw themselves into each other's arms, weeping with joy and relief. Having celebrated their freedom, Hansel and Gretel had nothing to fear, so they decided to search the house. In one room, everywhere they looked, treasures glittered, pearls, precious stones, gold coins. Hansel and Gretel, their eyes shining with excitement, filled as many bags as they could with glittering treasures. With their bags full of riches, they left the witch's house and set off along a secret path she had created to make it easy for them to reach the town. They walked for a long time, but the forest, once dark and frightening, now seemed more familiar. The sun guided them through the trees, and soon, at the bend in the path, they saw the roof of their home in the distance. In a burst of joy, they began to run. As they passed through the door, they fell into the arms of their father, who hugged them tightly with tears in his eyes. Since their departure, he had known only sorrow and remorse, and his wife was dead. But now it was all forgotten. Hansel and Gretel shook their bags, dropping a stream of treasures that rolled onto the floor and table. Poverty and despair were now a distant memory. Now rich and happy, Hansel, Gretel, and their father lived together in peace, their home warmed by newfound love and light. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please support our channel by liking, commenting, and sharing the video. And above all, subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos in the pipeline.